Helpline, helpline, help. Somebody help me. Do you want to play Adam? Helpline, help.
Little Sam Rivers, little Beatrice.
Sam Livers.
For a Monday, for a dreary Monday afternoon. Peter, I used to abhor dreary days.
Abhor.
But now with our open window here, man.
Yes.
I'm really digging them.
No, it works. It works well for us when we have a little bit of overcast. Keeps the blinding south skies from coming in here. So this is exciting. What's happening, man?
Oh, man, I'll tell you what's happening. So it is Jazz Helpline Live. That's what's happening.
I'm aware of that. Q&A Monday, we also call it.
Q&A Monday. This show is happening. We're going to be here every Monday.
Shoving jazz down your throat, whether you like it or not. Answers and
I mean,
anecdotes.
every single week until we get bored.
This is only number 2.
I know.
No, this is actually... I mean, I love this kind of stuff, hopefully being able to help. I was thinking back to, like, all the questions I had, and not just when I was younger, but, it's like when you're trying to learn something, it's so exciting to, like, get answers. I especially like getting multiple answers. I used to ask...
Absolutely.
I used to ask musicians that I played with that were better than me, which was pretty much everybody at the beginning. As you would, as a young lad. But I would ask, like, how do you approach this chord? How do you play this voicing or whatever? And the diversity of answers, that's where the magic is at. So this is not about the right or wrong, I mean, even some things like fingering or whatever, there's different approaches. And so it's the Q&A time, the helpline is always an exciting time.
Geo Cosmic Valentine is in the spirit here. You'll hear it. Hello, Jazz Helpline. How do I get the stains out of my 5/7 flat 9 flat 13s? I've tried everything, including bleach. Can you help me? That's exactly what we want to
Can I tell a funny helpline story?
That's
I had a friend. I have a friend, and he for his wife's birthday one time. He was not much of the chef, but he was very excited. He was gonna bake his wife a birthday cake, right? And he's telling us the story. And he says, he goes to get the Betty Crocker box cake. You remember the ones that
of course.
You add egg and milk, and that's it, maybe.
They're not that bad, actually.
Then you put it in. And he said, he's like reading the box, and he wants to make it just right. And on the back, there's a number, like an 800.
Oh, yeah, famously. Yeah. That's right. That's right.
But I was already laughing at the story because I was like, I'm not a great chef, but what could you possibly need to call this
the
number?
Back of a box.
I mean, what it's like the instructions are 1, 2, 3. Like beat in 1 egg.
Yeah, exactly. Bake it at 350
water.
for 10 minutes and you're good to go.
Yeah, but he's like, well, I had a question because I wanted to make sure this get it right. And he said, so I called the number, and he said, he was like, I was so upset because when they answered, he's like, first of all, it rang for a long time.
Yeah,
he didn't like that, and he said when they answered, this woman's like, hello. And he's like, wondering, did he have the wrong number? He's like, who is this? And she's like, who is this? And he's like, I'm calling for the Betty Crocker helpline. Yeah. And I was like, dude, what are you expecting, Betty Crocker? Yeah. And he's like, well, no, she should have been more professional, like Betty Crocker helpline.
Yeah.
I said, dude, they probably pay this woman. No one ever calls it because there's no reason to. They're just like, on the off chance somebody calls, please answer.
She's just at her house, like somewhere in rural Michigan, just chilling. Yeah.
It was just big for it. But that's not what we're doing to you guys. We are here and ready at the helpline.
We are actually ready to help. That's right. Hey, before we get to the help, though, if you haven't...
Help us.
help us help you. If you haven't subscribed to the new channel here, you're on the new channel, the You'll Hear It YouTube channel. It's our secondary channel. Of course, we have our world famous, I don't know, Caleb, if you can go to my shot here, just over my right shoulder here.
Oh, look at that.
We've got our world famous open studio.
Let's see what's over my shoulder.
Yeah, what is over it? Oh, just
nothing.
Nothing. Okay, cool.
Right.
No, but so this is our secondary channel. So if you haven't subscribed to this channel, make sure to subscribe because we're not just doing our lives here. We're also uploading several videos a week of
Actually,
podcasts.
I'm looking here. The You'll Hear It channel. Can I share my thing here? Look at that. We have 159,000. Oh, no, that says 1.59.
Nope, it's 1.59.
Sorry. Okay.
Yep.
Well, help us out with that. Help us get up to that.
That's good. Yeah, and click the like on this video so we can spread the word.
Click like. It's fun and it's free. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Geo Cosmic Valentine.
How
do you weave a diminished scale into a stand? We might get.
So we're gonna take some questions from Open Studio members who have been posting over on the Jazz Helpline section of Open Studio Pro. I think we have 4 questions lined up from Open Studio folks. We also have a speak pipe, and then we're going to hit the chat towards the end. So if you want us to hit your question, you can leave it in the chat, and we'll do our best to get to it.
Yes.
Caleb, you want to put up the first question?
Question number 1, as we call it. Here we go. Can I read it?
Yeah.
Okay. This is from Nico. This is from our buddy. Do you have any tips for developing hand independence? I focus a lot on some of the previous advice, and for the vast majority of things, I practice with my left hand what I also learned with my right hand. That's the Jeffrey Keyser model.
That's right.
I'm working on bass lines and working with left-hand voicings, but when I try to go through a tune, try to keep a comping rhythm and try to keep the bass line, I struggle through it. Of course, not looking for a shortcut, but just advice on a methodical and effective practice approach. Right now, I just start painfully slow and try to keep up with the metronome, inching upwards. That's great with the metronome. Kind of gives you a little bit of structure to the practice. Sometimes I end up speeding up, but then I'm locked into what I learned versus having fluidity to really navigate thoughts. Okay, one thing is, I think the metronome is fine to do this, but hand independence is definitely something that, like the simplify and isolate concept might be good.
Yep.
So in terms of like working on your time and tempo, we don't want to work on too many things at a time. Now, having said that, you can have the metronome going there, just kind of giving you a little bit of structure, starting slower and moving faster. But like just working with a bass line, there's so much built into that. I mean, I know a lot of times we want to get our time together and our independence and all that, but sometimes the most efficient way to do that is to really break them down separately, because we not only want our brains to be able to focus on that, we want to get that repetition in, we want to get the way that it feels, we want to get our ears acclimated. That's already a lot to do. So like if you're, a lot of times we want to do, independence practice, so we might jump in with the right hand. But I say do a whole course, just the left hand, because we got to hear, and then we're starting to give yourself a chance to think about what you might do with your right hand before you even do it. So I'm thinking like, bop, boo, da, like real specific comping phrasing.
Yeah.
Bop, bop, scoot up, bop, do, skadoo, hop, before you even play it. Bang. So then when you go, you're kind of hearing those rhythms. And then we're working on independence, so it's not so much about working on your voicings, working on your time or whatever. Very basic voicings, but you're working on the rhythm, you're working on control, you're working on actually doing different things with both hands. You know what I mean? And this can go all the way from like, so the only requirement with the left hand is that you continue with quarter notes. And then when you start, later on, very intentional about your phrasing being different with the hands. And if you think about like anticipations, trying to keep that left hand the same, right? See, I messed up the left hand. I missed one. Because I wanted to demonstrate what it sounds like to miss it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Good demonstration.
That's how you start to feel. That was good, right?
Well, I like that you started off with the walking bass line, A, because it's quarter notes, B, because it's practical. But quarter notes are great because there's not a lot of thought involved, right? You're thinking about the bass line.
Yeah.
You know the rhythm's going to be the same, right? So the notes don't matter as much. But you don't have to like invent new rhythms.
Yeah.
But you often talk about this, and I remember we had Emmett Cohen do a masterclass. He said that you really need to be able to practice this, Nico, and be able to have a conversation as you're doing it, like I'm having now. Right? So that I can talk to you and I can explain.
Hey, what's going on, man?
And I can play with my left hand this bass line without having to think about really anything. And hopefully it's kind of in time.
Is that programmed, or are you playing this live?
I'm playing this live.
So
This is the practice. So even before you do anything with you, like you were saying, like, see if you can, Nico, get this so automatic that you don't even have to think about it. I can talk to Caleb and come up with whatever I want to do.
It's Halloween. Scared you.
I'm
doing good.
Even have my coffee.
Very good.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that has to be automatic, and then you can add in all of the other things.
Right.
Yeah.
And then, one thing, there's a lot of parts to this, but one other thing that a lot of people don't think about is, so you're locking in the left hand to something specific. You can also flip it around. And I like to think about it as like almost like a balance thing, kind of like with yoga, like everything you do on one side for flexibility or for stretching or whatever, you always do it evenly. It's a very important part of that. But you could think about the right hand where you're like.
Yeah, it's like.
Yeah.
Or you could even, I know you want to know the Keyser method would be this.
Oh, yeah.
That's really tough. Oh, that's cheating. That's cheating. But Nico, the point is you have to put, so our brains don't work. We can't do two things at once. Our brains don't work like that. The attention goes one place only. Of course, things could be happening in the peripheral, but they need to be locked into your unconscious or subconscious mind, right? So we can't focus on two things simultaneously. We can only focus on one thing.
Yeah.
So whenever you do anything independent, one of those things has to be somewhat on autopilot, or more than that, you're switching your attention really fast between those two things.
Yep, absolutely. And yeah, I mean, the main thing with this, Nico, is it does take time to develop, but we want to really concentrate in on whatever element we're doing of our hand independence practice and try to isolate that from everything else. It can seem like it'll be kind of some of your easier practice will be like, oh, I've got that. I'm walking the baseline and it's going well. But you want to keep pushing through, keep going, because repetition from that further sort of ingrains that. And a lot of it's just being very present and really listening as you're playing and connecting with what that feels like with your hands. Because it's such a crazy thing, because once it starts really working, you're kind of like, oh my God, my hands are just doing stuff automatically, especially when you start thinking about independence of 3, 4, even 5 zones. Like there's no way to sort of intellectualize it, or as you say, information your way to being able to do this, but you can repeat it. So, like a lot of different habits, if you're very conscious at the beginning of the development of the habit and then let that kind of morph into a more unconscious approach, it can work really well.
Absolutely. Okay, let's put up our next question.
Next question. Boom. You want to read this?
This is from Jack. We have learned on Chris's class, that's Chris Parks, who's one of our Open Studio Pro instructors, the options to use various Barry Harris diminished scales for the 5 and a 2-5-1. E.g. in G, options are D7 diminished, A minor 6 diminished, minor 6 to 5th, A flat 7 diminished, the tritone sub, and E flat minor 6. I understood some of those words. Could a backdoor dominant be used, i.e. B flat 7 diminished and its minor 6 of 5 also work? And in what situations would any, if these work for a certain harmonic color? So a 2-5-1, here, you got it. I assume
when we were talking backdoor,
the 5, so a 5 and the 2-5-1. So he means in the key of C here.
Yes.
So a 5 and a 2-5-1 options are the D7 6 diminished, the A minor. I think he means the A flat
6 diminished.
Right, the A minor 6 diminished, and the A flat 7, the tritone sub, and the E flat minor 6 diminished. Could a backdoor dominant be used, i.e. B flat 7 diminished and its minor 6 of 5?
My mind is exploding.
So Jack, that is definitely a Chris. I wonder if we can get Chris.
Are we having to phone a friend on this question?
Hold on a second. Hold on, everybody. Peter, take the next question.
Well,
actually, why don't you grab one from the chat?
I'm just going to talk about a little bit about the backdoor 5. Oh, yeah, no, I'll do it from the chat. That's good, because I don't want to reverse the hands. Exactly. Okay. Boom, boom, boom. Lance asked, I'd like to create trumpet improv exercise based on chords of jazz standards. I create trumpet improv exercise based on chords. Suggestions: compose solos, arpeggios, scales. Thank you. Well, oh my gosh, this is the helpline.
Hello.
Hey, Chris Parks.
Adam, what's happening, man?
Hey, man. Hey, so you are, just so you know, you're here with Peter Martin.
What's up, Chris?
Oh, hey, Peter.
And you're here with some of our members on Open Studio. We got a great question about one of your classes, and we thought, we were going to really hack our way through answering it.
Oh, terrific. Okay, go ahead.
We just took a shot that maybe you'd answer your phone. Caleb, can you put that question back up? So this is Jack Haran. Do you know Jack, Chris? Is he in your classes? So he says,
yes, I do.
You're also live on YouTube, just so you know.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, terrific.
Yeah.
So, Chris, by the way, if you don't know, has this fantastic YouTube channel called Things I've Learned from Barry Harris. Go subscribe to that immediately. So, Chris, one of our Open Studio Pro members asked, we've learned in Chris's class the option to use various Barry Harris diminished scales for the 5 chord in a 2-5-1. So, like, if the 5 were a G chord, like in the key of C, the options are D7 diminished, A minor 6 diminished, the minor 6 of the 5th, A flat diminished, the tritone sub, and E flat minor 6 diminished. Right?
Yep.
So Jack asks, could a backdoor dominant be used, i.e. B flat 7 diminished, and its minor 6 of 5 also work? And in what situations would these work for a certain harmonic color?
I guess it could if you had enough time.
If you had enough time? Yeah.
Yeah, if you had enough time to do it. I mean, it depends. If it's 2 beats a piece, it's going to be tough to do that. If you have a full, like, 4 measures of something, yeah, you could definitely do that. But I like to combine a bunch of them. So I might say D7 diminished scale and then throw in a little E flat minor 6 diminished scale.
Yeah.
So you combine both of those two.
See, this is what I'm saying, Peter. This is why we have Chris Parks around. Look at this.
Exactly.
Man, that was great. So everybody go subscribe to Chris's YouTube channel, Things I Learned from Barry Harris. And Chris is teaching 3 days a week at Open Studio Pro and just crushing it. Everyone loves that class. So, Chris, thanks so much for picking up your phone, man.
Yeah.
Oh, man, terrific. And it's terrific to talk with you and Peter.
Yeah, Chris.
We'll see you soon, buddy.
Thanks, bro.
Okay.
Later.
Thanks, Adam. Bye.
Man, this is awesome. Q&A helpline has just gotten a lot easier.
We
man.
need to get like the on the phone Chris Parks with his like picture up.
Exactly.
Next time.
With the telephone.
All right, Peter, who are you calling now?
I know. Well, we'll
one?
see if we get stumped again. I got people on my phone too, man. I don't know if they'll answer, but
It was amazing. I can't believe you picked up.
I'm gonna call Caleb.
All right, Caleb. Let's put up the next one here. Oh, this is from Richard.
What's up, Richard?
Yeah, Richard is a regular OS proer and a really fine player in his own right. How do I get better at sight reading piano charts for big band? Is the best approach practicing classical music, or should I expect to just play poorly until I can hear the recording the chart is referencing? So, Richard, I'm not a great sight reader. I'm not the worst, but I'm also not like the best. I took a sight reading class when I was in my brief stint at the New School University.
I didn't know that
heard
existed.
of it. There was a sight reading class, and it was taught by, I forget his name, but he was like a Broadway pianist. This guy was like a monster sight reader. I mean, a monster sight reader.
Gotcha.
Like, could just put anything in front of him. And his biggest training for us, like what he had us do for the entire year, essentially, Richard, was practice sight reading. You got to practice it every day. It's like anything else you want to get good at. You have to practice reading new things.
I want the
every
easy
day.
way.
I know. The easy way never works that well.
Yeah.
You got to practice it every day by reading stuff you don't know. And for pianists, we have so many shapes coming at us. That's why you have to do it every day, because you start to learn the way the chord shapes look and everything looks within the keys and things like that.
Yep.
But you really have to practice looking 1, 2, 3, 4 bars ahead, depending on how fast things are going. You cannot be reading what is happening in the moment.
Yeah.
You have to be reading ahead of what's happening, but you have to practice that every day. So that's the only advice I'm going to give you on sight reading, because like I said, I'm good, not great.
Yeah, I mean, I've had periods where I've been pretty good, maybe even great a little, but only because I was doing it a lot, and this is many years ago. But then also been some gigs that I've been on where I had to do a fair amount of sight reading. I mean, he's asking specifically about big band charts. That's where I actually find it sort of the easiest. Although I'm thinking back, like I remember playing. There's a piece that Wynton Marsalis wrote called "All Rise," which is basically, I mean, it's for big band and orchestra and choir, I believe. I mean, it's a massive piece. And I actually played on the recording for that. And, you know, it's the kind of thing, there's some, like, he wrote some really hard stuff in the piano part, but in going through it, one thing is to like be just thinking about the structure and the patterns of what's in the sight reading, because I think what you said in terms of practicing, that's great stuff to get better at it. But you're always going to be in a situation where either you're not quite ready, or it's something new, or you haven't been practicing it, or you're out of practice or whatever. And so you want to kind of maximize your chances. And the way really good piano sight readers do this is they're able to quickly identify the parts that they really need to nail. So not only are you looking ahead, you're kind of listening to what's going on and taking notice when you've got some hard stuff to play that's along with another section, or it's happening while the whole band's playing. And I don't want to say you can disregard that, but you kind of can, because you're not going to be heard anyway as the pianist in the big band. So you start to learn when those places are. And I remember in doing that All Rise, like I had a little chance to practice it, but Winton was like writing it right up to the last minute. We actually were performed it live at the Los Angeles Philharmonic and the Lincoln Center Big Band and all this, but then we had to go record it the very next day. So I didn't have weeks to practice the final version. It was like very much. So it's as much about sort of focusing in on those areas that you know are going to be really exposed and making sure you nail those quickly, as it is with going through it. Like a lot of times we learn how to do something from beginning to end. And in learning a piece of music quickly or having to sight read it, if you have, I mean, look, true sight reading is like you put it in front of you and you have to play it right away. Then you have to go through it in a linear fashion. But usually you have a little bit of time to look at it, rehearse it, or at least check it out. You need to be able to jump ahead and be able to just visually find those tricky parts and work those out, because you're not going to have time to learn everything. Yeah. You know, and you got to also
peruse the
no, yeah. And it's just something I learned from learning classical music in general. Like a lot of classical players, they can play the beginning of the piece so much better because they practiced it more. Mm-hmm. And the beginning of the piece isn't necessarily the hardest part. So, but like every time they sit down, they start at the beginning. It's like, then you know that, but you're always spending more time on that. And then you go a little bit further. So what happens by the time you get to the end of the piece, you've done the beginning like 400 times and you've only done the last part one time. So it's more about identifying those areas that are a little bit trickier. And then of course, you know, I think part of the art of sight reading is knowing what to leave out when you get to really tricky stuff, either rhythmically or two-handed things. You got to pick something and try to execute it well. Pattern recognition is really what it's about too. So you're listening to hear when things are happening that other people are playing that you're going to see later. Again, like what you're saying, looking ahead. Yep. And yeah, when you practice it, especially big band charts, you start to recognize patterns that a lot of writers use, so you kind of get some stylistic cues. Yep. So you're not having to count everything out. You look at a measure and you know that's bap bap doo da bap dee da. You know, you know what that looks like. Basically, you know what it sounds like.
That's right.
Yeah, experience.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, Caleb, we got one more, and then maybe we can hit the chat after this one.
Okay.
Dr. Timothy Khalil, what is your transcription process? So Timothy is a brand new Open Studio Pro member and already pretty active in there. It's a good question. And, you know, we do our Piano Masters Club, which is our transcription club at Open Studio. We just had it today, and we just finished, actually, Wynton Kelly's solo on What's New. It was the last week, and so many people nailed it. It was so much fun. So I'll speak to mine process first. And then, Peter, you can talk about yours. So the honest answer, Timothy, is that it's constantly changing. Like that process of transcription has changed over the years. When I was really young, there was a lot of very deep transcribing of full solos and really trying to hear both hands, left hand, and you know, really doing a lot of that work. I still do some transcription now, but it's definitely not as deep as that. I will go and I'll find really specific things that I want to learn.
Kind of tactical.
It's tactical because I don't need to transcribe. I mean, I can say I don't need. It's always a good idea, but I don't need as much to transcribe a full Red Garland solo as I did when I was 18. I'll hear a chord in a Beethoven, string quartet, and I'll be like, "What is that?" Like, right. I've learned after a long time, Timothy, to just follow my heart on things. So I don't, transcribe because someone's like, you should be transcribing this anymore. I transcribe because it's like, what am I interested in? What do I want to learn? But I do transcribe things now, especially I never learn a tune anymore by sheet music unless it's something that's temporary, like it's for sight reading on a gig or something like that. If I'm going to add it to my repertoire, I learn it by ear and I do some research on it. I've spent way more time in the last 5 years learning tunes on each tune, transcribing it, than I had in the previous 20, just by learning it from a real book or from someone showing it to me or on a gig or whatever.
Right.
So that process has definitely changed. But then, now it's like I feel like just I'm picking stuff off. I'm just like, I want this, I want this, I want this, I want this. I've done a couple of solos, or at least choruses of solos, in the last couple of years, but it's evolved over time for sure.
Yeah. I think that's all great stuff, and that's very similar to my journey at different times, what you're describing. I would add in terms of a process, the often spoken about but also often overlooked element of listening, very deep and attentive, focused listening and learning of the solo. I think you want to think about learning the solo before you sit at the piano or sit at your instrument to actually figure out the notes. And the reason for this, and what that means is you can sing along with the solo. You know it from beginning to end, like how many choruses it is. Not just like, oh, it's 4 choruses. I mean, like what it feels like when it's going between the choruses, the ebb and flow of it, the architecture of the solo. You really know the solo like the back of your hand, as close as you can. And I like to do that, and have found, I haven't always done this, but when I have, it's always been the smoothest and deepest road to learning and really getting a lot out of the transcription when I do that. So you even have to hold off a little bit if you do it like this. And look, you can try this. If it works for you, that's great. I'm just saying what's kind of worked for me. But you have to very intentionally hold off on jumping in and trying to figure something out as you're learning it, because that's sort of your inclination. Oh, what's being played there. But what I find happens, see, like when you hear a solo and you can sing it and you learn the phrasing and you're just listening to it and dealing with it as a sonic pleasure, you can never go totally back to that once you start learning it, because you're into the weeds. You're looking at how the vegan sausage is being made. And that's a great thing. And that's part of the transcription process. But you lose a little bit of that holistic understanding and appreciation of the solo, which is a big part of what we can get out of the transcription process. That's right. So, really learn it. And you could even use that as a barometer. Like, can you sing the whole solo? So that's basically, you've memorized the solo before you even sit at your instrument and try to learn it. Then when you do that, a couple of other tactics, I think all the stuff you said was great, and a lot of things I think folks know, avoiding using a written transcription, a printed transcription if you can, and just doing it by ear, because you'll get that ear training and you'll have a better entry point to really learning the phrasing and the rhythmic approach, the structural approach, all the things that the page can get in the way of kind of what your understanding of it is, that more organic flow of the solo. But some other little tricks and tactics that I've found useful is, as you're listening to it and learning it, before you start to learn it, identify the tricky parts, the phrases, the choruses, the measures, whatever it is that's gonna that you can already tell is like, okay, that's gonna really take some time to learn that. Identify those. Same way we're talking about sight reading, wherein you want to start learning the solo at the beginning, but you also want to attack those more difficult places early, because a lot of times it's later on in the solo. I'm thinking about like some John Coltrane solos I learned, where it's just like hard to hear, but there's really interesting stuff you want to get. And maybe there's like one phrase that is going to be really challenging. Have that as part of your practice routine from the beginning, where you're already jumping forward to learning that, because it'll just help with your momentum of learning it. If you wait until you get to that point of the solo, you're not going to have as much time, and you're going to get kind of bogged down in that. Because a lot of times those really difficult phrases, or maybe it's like a left-hand thing. I remember trying to really like figure out some voicings that Monk was doing. It just took so much listening and trial and error. Try to identify those tricky areas and give them a little bit of practice before you actually get to them as you're moving through sequentially in the solo, because it'll just give you more exposure, and it'll end up kind of reducing the time that it takes to really learn the solo.
Great stuff. Caleb, I just sent you a screenshot from one of the YouTube questions here. We should do this on Ecamm. We should think about an Ecamm thing.
That means nothing to most people except the three.
No, I was talking to you guys.
Internal, yeah.
Just ignore the 86.
Oh, I had a quick question while he's doing that that we can do from Steve, our buddy Steve Parrish. Oh, okay, let's do that one. Then I'll do
so
Steve.
George George asks, rootless voicings, autumn leaves, C minor 7. How do I avoid doubling the third of E flat? I guess you mean the minor third on the C minor 7. When I leave out in the left hand, it's thin. Thanks. This is really bugging me. So this is like... So, first of all, George, you definitely don't have to not double it.
Yeah.
So one of the greatest voicings you can do is this: C, B flat, E flat, B flat, E flat. That's a very common to do a double third, double 7. Right? So don't feel like you have to not double it, but if you don't want to double it, why not use it as part of it?
Is he talking about doubling the third in the melody?
Yeah. So
that's
if
fine.
It's fine, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't have to feel like you always have to not double everything. If you wanted to not double it, George, and do a two-handed rootless voicing, I think here's your best bet. Fourths. So G, C, F, B flat, and E flat. Right?
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah, but I mean, I think we're probably not going to be. Like these voices, you know, when we typically talk rootless, there's a good chance we're going to be just, boom, boom. You know, we're not going to be sitting on them a long time.
Yeah, you definitely don't have to not avoid it. So if you want to, you can
jump in and off of it.
Whatever any of your preferred.
Yeah.
Like, does that sound bad?
Right.
No, it sounds great.
That doesn't sound good. That's just taking it away. Did you guys see that?
I think they missed it. It's good stuff.
But this is the other thing. Like, these kinds of voicings, especially rootless voicings in this region of the piano, I really think that what really affects if they work or not is where you go to next and how you play them. You know, so a lot of times when we're practicing these, we'll sit there and go, oh, I don't like the way that sounds. But you're not going to play it like that.
Yeah. Woo. It's getting fancy.
But that's just moving up half step, and then the voice leading.
Right.
Right? And then that's not even rootless. That shouldn't work.
That has the root.
Right, but it's not on the bottom.
But also, what about this? What about going the opposite way?
Well, that's not a voicing.
It's not?
No.
Little guide tone?
That's a little counterpoint. You went back to the Baroque period. If you do that on too many gigs, it's going to take you to the Broke period, too.
Oh,
okay,
boy.
sorry.
Okay.
That was bad. It's Monday. Helpline. Help!
All right, who's your... well, George, I hope that helps. Yeah, the fourths. And then if you do...
another thing, just real quick. Like, think about this. This is why I'm saying it matters. We never want to look at this as a static issue. It's always like, where are you going? So even if you play and feel like that's kind of lame, fix it. Not fix it, but like have it lead somewhere.
Go somewhere.
Tension and release. Because a lot of people play that, which is fine, but...
Yeah.
Or...
Slow down, Peter.
That's using the minor 11.
One. He's going.
Yeah, sorry.
George, if you do the fourth thing, right?
Yeah, I like that.
G.
Do that. It's easier.
Yeah, that's good. If you do the G, C, F, B flat, and with the melody on top, right? So you can split between the two hands here, right? Like you can break it up from what the melody is.
But so are you putting the E flat on the bottom?
No. Oh. You could.
What about this?
That sounds great.
Well,
that sounds great.
You'll hear it.
No, what I'm saying, George, is you can, of course, break it up so you don't have to like slam everything with the melody.
But that's also a way you can get away with some triads. So if you go fourth, you're going fourth, throw a little E flat triad.
Yeah.
And then D triad. Back to diatonic fours.
That's really good stuff. Are you guys hearing that? All right, hold on. Just before we, you have another question before we get to it? Just,
Yes.
Caleb, if you can go on me real quick. If this is your first time here on this channel, make sure to hit the like and subscribe. This is
Okay, sorry.
I'm opening my
Go
business.
ahead.
Hit the like and subscribe. We go live here every Monday. You don't want to miss it. Put the bell on. Put the notifications on.
Nobody
And
does that.
No one does
I
that.
know.
But if you are the kind of person to do that, go ahead and do it because
I'm
this
gonna
is a
put the
brand new
bell
channel
on.
for us, so we're trying to build it up.
Hold on,
so
I'm
go
putting the
ahead.
bell on. Yeah, I did it.
Okay.
Bell is on.
All right, Peter, you got another question.
Okay, so this was from. I lost. Who was it from? One of our friends. One of our friends here. Steve Parrish. Backdoor. This is going back. Backdoor. What is all this backdoor business? New term for me. So that kind of came up in the question that Chris Parks answered. But backdoor in general, one of the most popular ones. And look, I didn't know what this was until I did the Stevie Wonder video. Because I heard people talk about the backdoor, and then I tried to come up with the other one, but I didn't really understand it.
Yeah.
All it is like you're looking at different substitutions, different ways to get to. Let's do D flat major just because I'm bored
do
with
it.
C.
Let's do it.
Okay, so different ways to get to D flat. That's your tonic. That's your major situation, right? So 2-5, E flat minor, A flat 7. We all know that. Or a 2 dominant, 5, or 4. 5, 1,
Right.
But any kind of backdoor would be something where you're coming from the bottom.
Yep.
Typically on this would be like C. I think a C7 sharp 9, flat 13 might be. So you go like E flat minor, C7 sharp 9 to D flat minor.
It's
D-flat
either
major.
the flat 7 is probably the most common. So like.
Oh, I thought it was the major 7. Oh, right. That's right.
flat
That
7.
was my little thing on the Stevie, right? 'Cause
Right. A Yardbird suite. That's called the backdoor 2-5.
Yardbird suite. That's what I should have said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that is also a nice hack there, bro.
Oh, so it's a backdoor 2-5. I thought it was just the backdoor 5.
It can be just a backdoor
Okay.
5, but that specifically that
Right.
thing of like, okay, so, and this is actually a great music theory. So
Yeah.
the backdoor thing, it's a colloquial term, but it leads to a pretty interesting music theory thing. And Yardbird suite, Charlie Parker's Yardbird suite is a perfect example of this. So the first key outside of a diatonic key, let's go back to C because everybody understands it a little easier. Buckle in, my friend, because I'm going to take you on a bit of a theory ride. I don't know if you know this, but I'm working on
You want to Rick Beato it up on the whiteboard or no?
Yeah, let me go grab this whiteboard. No, so I'm working on a new jazz theory for beginners course for Open Studio.
Ever heard of it?
Coming soon. But so if we want to go outside of a diatonic key, like taking it out or
Yeah.
whatever, and this is really about composition, but this can also be about substitution, which I
Yep.
think is what you're talking about. But the backdoor, especially that flat 7 backdoor,
Yeah.
this comes into what we're about to talk about. So the first place that we can go is borrowing from a key a minor third away. In this case, a minor third up. So for
Yeah.
the key of C,
E
we've
flat
got this key
major.
of E flat major. Check it out. So if I'm composing something or if I'm coming up with a chord progression, and I'm going to stay all diatonic here for now. But if I ever want to go outside, I can pick literally any chord from the key of E flat major, diatonically.
Yeah. And that's going to be one of your furthest points of departure.
It's going to be a great place to start. So here's the key of C. And what about, B flat 7 sus to B flat 7 to A minor? So I'm getting, maybe I want to go from the 6th chord to the 2 chord, right? A minor 7 to D minor 7, but I want a little passing thing. So why not an E flat major? It's chromatic. But anything borrowed from, so if we're in the key of C, we have these 7 chords, right? Anything borrowed from the 7 chords of E flat major also sound good in the key of C.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I think there's a certain element of, choices from majors moving, major chords, kind of alternate tonic centers moving away in the diminished cycle. So C major, E flat major, G flat major, A major, C is kind of an interesting way to travel. And oh, that's actually going down. I thought that was, we talked about what's new.
Yeah.
That's down a major third.
Down a
actually.
major third. Yeah.
Similar though, because that's
Yeah,
pretty close. The A flat major to the E flat, it's just one flat off.
See what I'm saying? Don't get into the high ridgeness.
Yeah, and I mean that's you really have a doppio backdoor, what we call there,
Doppio,
where you go B flat
Now we're just making sense.
to B to G over B.
We got a question from David Robinson.
What up, David?
But check it out, Peter. So if you're coming up with something in that groove, just that first entree, right, into the key of E flat.
What if we backdoored into the E flat even?
Oh, look out now! Look out!
And then backdoor back to C.
They're all family. Patrick says, sounds like jazz theory for beginner course will include some stuff new for those of us who have been beginning for many years.
And look, yeah, no, this is going to be a great course. I think you're going to demystify a lot of really cool things. Jazz theory, like a lot of this stuff is actually not, I mean, it's jazz theory,
Not
but
in concrete.
it's not in concrete, and it's also not like just because you didn't know. Like the important thing is to know what it sounds like and how to kind of use it.
100%.
Because I don't know why I didn't. I don't even think I'd heard the term. I'm sure I did, but it was kind of like
I haven't heard of
Hugh
any
Laurie.
of this stuff.
I'd never heard of him, but that was just like somehow you randomly just avoid somebody who's super popular. And
Yeah.
it's not common, but whatever.
So David, longtime friend of Open Studio Pro member, all around good dude, and very fine pianist. Peter, I don't know if you've heard David play recently, but he's sounding
Yeah, I mean he's kind of
good.
He's kind of known as our most improved student, most accomplished in some ways.
He's
you know,
playing
from
great.
when we first, because he
Playing
also
from
puts
the heart.
himself out there.
Yeah, he's-
shares his music. He's got a band out in L.A., Palm
sound great.
Springs, doing
Sound
his
great.
thing.
So David says, what approach do you use to incorporate musical vocabulary you are working on that is not yet part of your soloing? So we've been talking about this a lot in Open Studio Pro too. Peter, I'm
Yeah.
wondering what your thoughts are. Like when you hear something, you know, when you are transcribing
Yeah.
or you are trying to learn stuff, how do you incorporate it?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, for me, I just let it kind of come in.
Backdoor?
Yeah, kind of backdoor it a little bit. No, I think that the better your ears get and the more organized your kind of musical sensibilities and focus is, the easier it is for you to assimilate, you know, be it vocabulary ideas or harmonic ideas or any kind of anything that you hear. And for me, the most exciting thing is like I'll hear something in a live performance and be like, oh, I like that. But I don't necessarily need to, like, I'll just sort of let it spin around in my brain for a while and then see if it comes out later. I'm not that worried about like, oh, like I don't want to lose this idea. Let me write it down or let me make sure I practice it. Not that I know everything, I don't. And not that I want to be static in my development. It's just that at this point, I feel like I have a lot of like really good ideas, almost more than I can incorporate as it is. So I let it sort of simmer with a lot of the other stuff. But having said that, I spent a lot of time to get to this point in terms of like doing specific things to bring them into my playing. So I would always try to look at the largest kind of phrase or sometimes even combinations of phrases, sort of meta phrase or something that, no, not a meta phrase, a macro phrase.
There you go.
You know, that I could incorporate somewhere. More like in my practice. I never did this really on performances, at least not consciously, because I was just too afraid to, and I just thought it would sound corny, you know, to purposely. But you can do it when you're practicing. So I think if you change one element, the easiest of which is probably just a different tune. You know, you can also look at a different key, a different chord even. But like that's a way, because a lot of times these phrases, especially, and this is why I love learning like saxophone solos, trumpet solos. You know, Clifford Brown's birthday was the other day. So many great, you know.
It's so good.
You know, like the phrasing on a different instrument, it requires a lot of you, even on a relatively simple solo like that, to be able to like make adjustments to your hand position, to try to, I mean, you can never get that exact. There's certain things the trumpet can do, the piano can't do. The piano can do, the trumpet can't do. But it just opens up your imagination. It kind of forces your technique to be focused around a new area to kind of match that new sound. So it's just a great way. Also, certainly learning piano solos. The whole thing is like, it's not just about the specific It's not just about the notes. It's not just about the
notes. Don't matter.
The notes don't matter.
Yeah.
It's not about those specific phrases as much as like putting you in a position to create something new that you're improvising that is not based upon something that's already comfortable in your hands and in your ears. And that process opens you up, gives you the confidence, takes away some of the fear from doing that in general, because ultimately you want to be trying stuff that you're hearing. So as much as you could hear a Clifford Brown line and be like, wow, that's kind of jankety on the piano, let me figure out a way to do that. You might hear a phrase to play at a certain time on a gig that's kind of jankety for your hands, and you have to figure out how to do that. So it's as much about that process as it is about those specific phrases. So I don't think it's as important as people do. We get this question a lot, though, like, how do I incorporate it into my playing? And I know it's a painful pill to swallow to be like, don't worry, it'll just happen. But it really will. And it's about that process of going about bringing that into your consciousness, not so much bringing it into your specific playing at a particular time.
We only have time for maybe one or two more. I just want to hit. There's one right here from Ben Sinclair. In what ways, before we get to the shed, Caleb, Ben Sinclair says, in what ways are you pushing theoretical boundaries in your playing? I would say, Ben, that like you get to a certain point and you're not really thinking about. I mean, I'm not thinking about theoretical boundaries or anything.
You're not thinking. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. So. I mean, that's definitely pushing something. Here we go, guys.
Keep going.
No, I would say that, and I'll speak for Peter too, which is that you're just playing the things that you're hearing. So I'm not even evaluating where does this sit in the pantheon of jazz theory. That means a lot of notes that might not fit in, and that means some things that fit way too far in that you might, not consider or whatever. But
don't try to fit in.
This is the greatest. I'm so glad we got this one.
This is about you.
Jesse asks, how can I sing like Peter? Peter wins the new vocal course.
Never. Actually, I just want to report, Adam, we did a gig
getting
together.
Halloween scary now.
It's scary. I'm a horrible lounge singer for Halloween. No, on a serious note, we did a gig together about a week ago, the three of us, and some other folks joined in as well.
Yeah.
Producer Caleb at the drums.
Good singer on that one. Anita Jackson was singing.
Anita Jackson was singing. And you were singing. You sang some nice stuff.
I sang some stuff, yeah. I've been working on it, man.
I did not sing.
You should have.
What was the question?
We got one more. Caleb, you want to put up the last question here? This is a good one from the Shed. Is there another voicing approach like the Magic Voicing System that you guys offer? I need a systematic approach to voicings a la Magic Voicing System. Thank you, The Shed, for that free shout out. So Magic Voicing System is a course that I made. It's available to you if you're an Open Studio member. You can go check that out. And it's based off the pentatonic scale. So The Shed, we don't really have anything that's that clean. Like here's one scale. Here's all the voicings you can get from that one scale and all the chords they go over. There's nothing that's quite as like in a neat little box like that. But we do have bebop voicings for beginners where we talk about things like 6 chords and drop 2, drop 3. And we do have jazz chords for beginners, which The Shed, if you haven't checked out Jazz Course for Beginners, I don't know if you're an Open Studio member, if you just have the one course, but it deals with something that Peter and I both talk about, which is root shell pretty. Ever heard of it?
Yes.
And it's a great system because you can literally plug this in like for solo piano. You want to explain a little root shell pretty?
Well, you got your root, you got your shell,
yeah,
and then you got your pretty. Your ninth would be typically your first entry point there.
Yeah.
So G minor. The shell's the 3rd and the 7th. And you can do it, kind of where you put and what your choice of the pretty is based on if your 7th is on the bottom or on the top. And then you could do your 11th. That's real pretty. That's purdy.
Yeah, so you're basically stacking here. The root, the shell, which is the 3rd and the 7th, or the 7th and the 3rd, and then any pretty notes, the 5th, the 9th.
Oh, it can be more than one.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I knew that, but I thought we started with just one.
You can start with just one. And then it works for any kind of minor 7, major 7, dominant 7, diminished 7.
Yeah.
That's what's so great about root shell pretty is that you get everything in there,
Yeah, like fully diminished, it works.
Yeah. Are you getting a lot of love here for your vocal course, Peter? Come on,
so
you
bad.
got it. Yeah.
It's scary and
So give
bad.
me
Mono Martin. Yeah. I want to answer a real quick question here. Can a self-taught... Okay.
Little laughing.
Ho. Get ready for Christmas. Can a self-taught musician become a professional jazz player without any formal education? Yes.
Yep.
Unless you consider, wow, hello. See,
Hi.
if you want to be on the show, this is the best way. Just pull up your BMW right there. Okay. Unless you mean formal education, like listening to records, sitting in, playing, practicing. Like, I consider that formal. You can be self-taught and have a formal education. But if you mean like going to conservatory, going to jazz school, going to any kind of music school, or taking lessons, absolutely. And people have done it. I'm thinking of, a number of musicians, especially older musicians. It seems like everybody kind of, well, the other thing about this, what is a professional jazz player? That means that's your job.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can say you can become a really good jazz player. Professional, sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. Depends on what your life is. A really good player, it's like anything. Like, it sort of depends on your mentality and how you attack learning.
Yeah.
But there's no magic scrolls that Juilliard gives you or any of these.
Also, not everybody that comes out of a formal education can become a professional musician.
Definitely
a
not.
lot of people can't. So if you can figure it out any way, then figure it out.
Yeah, and sometimes like the team or community element is the most important. So you might not have a formal education, but you're part of a community or like a jam session or other players or just people you talk to online or whatever. That might be something that you need. Not like a totally solitary situation, but you can learn everything that you want. It just depends on like how self-starting you are, how much you can concentrate on your own with without somebody spoon feeding it.
I got a rant video coming up in YouTube
Uh-oh.
about sort of the truth about learning music later in life, which is kind of related to this. Like, I get a lot of people that are like, who are like 50 years old, who's like, I want to sound like Peter Martin in a year. And it's like,
well, I'm 52, so in 2 years you can.
slow down. No, but I think there's some honest discussions that can take place about how we learn and how good you can get. And
you know what? I might be putting some of those nasty hate comments on your YouTube video like I got. Because I don't know if I agree with you on this.
What do you mean? You don't agree that...
Are you going to... Because I have the feeling... Are you going to say there's going to be a cap? Like there's an age by which we start to... The inevitable decline, the mental and the artistic decline, in which we cannot reach the peaks of jazz piano stardom.
Well, in a way, yes.
Skill.
But the cap is actually... It's a very low cap.
But are you saying it's too late? Like you can't learn...
I'm saying that if you start playing the piano at the age of 25, that you will not be able to be as good as Peter Martin by the time you die.
What if your name is Herbie Hancock and you happen to start at the age of 25? You will be able to, you think?
Even if Herbie had never played piano and he started at 25, you're never going to have the facility. It's like if I
Have you ever seen a movie called Benjamin Button? Let me tell you about that. Let me tell you about how life works weird sometimes.
If I try to go learn Icelandic right now at 43, which is how old I am, I will be able to speak it fluently if I really put my heart and soul into it. But I will never sound like a native speaker. I'll never have the command of a native speaker, ever.
I don't know.
That's how our brains work, buddy. That doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. That doesn't mean that learning Icelandic wouldn't be very beneficial to me. It wouldn't be fulfilling. And that I wouldn't be able to, engage with people and make a difference in the world in Icelandic or playing the piano. Doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. But your expectations of being Keith Jarrett, if you didn't start until you were 40 years old, that's not realistic.
Well, your expectations of being Keith Jarrett if you start at 20 or 5 or 10 are pretty low as well.
Right, exactly. That's what I think a lot of people's expectations is like, if I just practice 8 hours a day for the rest of my life, I'll sound like Oscar Peterson. First of all, Oscar Peterson barely sounds like Oscar Peterson. No one else really sounds like that. But that's his story. Like, stop. My whole point is stop trying to put yourself into other people's stories. Like, you have something to offer, and by you trying to be like Oscar Peterson solely or thinking that's what the promised land looks like, that's not your story.
I got you. I guess the part that is often, and I've kind of evolved on this thinking, when we talk about like, you can learn, if we look at music as a language, which we certainly do, that it's not possible to learn it as deeply and as quickly as when you're a child and it's your mother, what they call the mother tongue, that you're learning as your original language. And I used to think that I was like, you can never learn a language or music or any of these things. You can learn it, but the later you wait, the harder it is. And I think that is true for a lot of people because of the mental model that they're using. Like, we're oftentimes over intellectualizing. Like, if you're young and you're learning to play jazz or play something off the radio or whatever, you're much more likely to not think about the theory and kind of over intellectualize it and to do the sort of intuitive things that are going to develop your ear in a way that later on, because we're smarter, we have more experience, we're like, hold on, I want to know how this works. If we grasp a hold of that intuitive approach to learning music that works so well for so many young people, I think we can get a lot of that.
Absolutely.
But we also have to take away this limiting belief where we're like, oh, we're old, I can't learn a language anymore because I can't learn Icelandic.
I'm getting pushback here in the comments, but that's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying that you can't be absolutely fantastic, Geocosmic Valentine. You can be absolutely fantastic on piano. You can be amazing. You can be exceptional. You can be a professional. You can be a recording artist. You can be all of those things. But can you be a Keith Jarrett or the very, very top level of 1% of musicians that everybody thinks that they should?
Elite level, you're talking about.
The elite level. I don't think it's possible.
But what would be the difference? What about if you started at age 20? Like I know some elite musicians that started maybe like at around 18 or 17.
Who?
Which is Reginald Veal. He started bass. Oh, he was playing other instruments. But he started bass at, I believe, 8. I want to say 17, 18, 16. I mean, later than you would think. Royce Martin, who was just in here, he started at 15.
15, yeah.
But piano, period.
Yeah. I'm not saying, this is where I got to be careful here. I got to craft my rant.
I like it. You're workshopping.
I'm kind of workshopping.
Well, you know what it is, though? I would agree and say that it's very difficult because there's so much programmed into us as we get older that mentally, physically, there's so many potentials for us to believe that we're in decline, that things are more different, especially language, artistically, physically for sure. And I do think that there's probably more physical limitations for activities, obviously, that are based around that. And so, I would say it's very, very, it's much harder because you have to break through certain mental blockades that you don't have to when you're younger. And it's the whole thing of like, the world is wide open. You can do whatever you want. And as you get older, there's been too many times when you've been proven where it's like, oh, wow, okay, maybe the world isn't wide open to me. I can't just do anything I want. And so then when you come to something later, it's kind of like you're setting you're being more realistic. Whereas that idealism when you're younger, like I can be Keith Jarrett, like you're just not going to be able to even get that in your mind. Or are you saying that people are thinking they're going to be like that?
I think people think that all they need. So here's where I'm losing folks. I'm not saying that you should limit your mindset going, and you should feel like, well, I can never do this. But I'm saying you have to let some things go. Like you have to not try. Like for some reason, when we're young, we're just trying to be like the best version of ourselves. We think we can do anything. Yeah. And that's why young people have an advantage. When we get older, we think like, I have to be as good as Peter Martin, right? And I have to try to get to that point. I'm trying to say, try to write your own thing with this. Don't try to be someone you're not.
Yeah.
Right? Stop thinking that that's your story. It is nothing to do with your story.
Right. But that should be easier as you're getting older.
But it's not, though.
Really?
I feel like people, at least the people that I see, they cling to this thing of, I got to be at this level. I got to progress. I got to do this. And I don't think young people think about that. But also, Peter, it's not even just that like, oh, yeah, if you focus and you practice. But like, it's almost like the Malcolm Gladwell Canadian hockey thing, right? Mm-hmm. So do you remember this from Outliers?
10,000 hours.
No, it was the Outliers one. It was
right.
Canadians in the NHL.
Because of when the kids were born.
Because when the kids are born. Because they get special coaching, then they get the best, they get in the better leagues, and they just, from the time they're young, they get the better training. And then by the time
they're born closer to the age deadline.
Right. So when did you meet Wynton Marsalis?
14.
And who did he hook you up with?
Kenny Kirkland.
And who else?
Marcus Roberts.
The peers.
Ellis Marsalis.
Who are your peers that he
Christian McBride and Roy Hargrove.
Yeah. So when I was 15, I was playing at the Shell station. You know what I'm saying? But like that path, I'll never get that.
Then you were playing with Willie Aikens shortly thereafter.
Yeah. True. But I'll never have your path, right? So like I can practice and I can have the best version of myself, but I need to let go. I'm going to be Peter Martin. I don't have that story. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know. I'm still workshopping it. I'm not telling anybody here not to do anything.
Well, you know what you mentioned too. I think that this is a beautiful thing. Is like, if you, I guess for me, it's not about trying to be, because I gave up trying to be at Herbie Hancock's level a long time ago. Although I guess at one point it's weird because when you're young, you're both. you're simultaneously very unconfident because you haven't really done anything yet, but then you're also cocky because you think the world is yours.
Yeah.
So it's actually I prefer like being older and more realistic a lot more because I know more things. I feel like I'm better. I know that I'm better, but I don't worry as much as like being like somebody. So I like that part of what you're saying. I think my only pushback was if you're saying that you can't progress at very rapid rates as you get older. I think a lot of people don't believe that. Like I didn't believe that, like say with my running and even like with yoga, certain things. It's like, oh, there's certain things. I mean, yeah, you have certain physical things happen as you get older, but I think part of that is a mindset. Yeah, I can't be Eliud Kipchoge at my age. I mean, not even at my age, at any age, but I'm not even thinking about that. But I can progress. I can still hit PRs and stuff, maybe, God willing, and correct training or whatever in the amount of time. And I think with music and any kind of language, a lot of times we start to think, oh, we're not going to be able to progress as much. A lot of times young people are progressing because they're so passionate and they don't have to worry about a job and a family, and they're throwing themselves in and they're learning in a very, very intuitive way. And we can capture some of that even as middle-aged and older folks. But agreed, putting aside that I have to be like this person, because that's the biggest limiting factor at any age that's going to hold you back, where you're not trying to say, I want to progress and enjoy the process and get better every day. That's absolutely possible.
Yeah,
we know that.
Yes, exactly. And I think that's what my goal for this rant would be. And thank you all for letting me workshop it. I'm still not communicating it well because I'm still getting some Peter should give up on his, according to Adam, Peter should not give up on his singing duets. Yeah, no, that's exactly right. Like I don't want to put a limiting belief. In fact, this is the opposite. I'm saying we should free ourselves from these things that we put on ourselves as we get older. Because when you're young, you don't know what you should or shouldn't be. You're just trying to be the best version of yourself.
And you don't really understand like the what time means, and being patient in these things. They're just abstract, not things that you've experienced.
But then also to enjoy what you're doing more as you get older. Because like, why aren't you going to be like Eliud Kipchoge? Like will you ever be able to run as fast as him?
It's looking like not, but we don't know.
You don't know. No, but why wouldn't you, right? Because you're not 25 years old. How is he, 28 or 30 or something like that?
He's actually 38.
Oh my God, okay.
Yeah, 39.
So he probably could run like Eliud Kipchoge. No, but
we just had a world record.
Probably, just because he's the greatest runner who's ever lived. He's got the genetics to run pretty fast, right?
Yeah.
And then, of course, the years and years of
experience,
training, and his mindset is probably, he's got the mindset of a runner.
But you know what we can do, and I think we can do this with music. So I think about this. So like if I improve, I'm so much like slower and less talented and less dedicated and less, skilled as a runner, but I can progress. And actually, when you're at a lower level, a much lower level, when you progress at something, I think this holds true for playing an instrument as well, you actually progress more. Like, so when you're at the world-class Eliud Kipchoge level, he just set a world record by 30 seconds in the marathon, which is a huge amount. Even a couple seconds is a lot. When you're talking about the 100 and the 200 meters, you're talking about like, 3/100ths of a second. Whereas if you're slow like me and you increase just a couple percent, that might be a couple minutes in the half marathon or something. So you can have exciting progress, and you can have, I like that somebody said here, Terry says, I would love to play like Chick Corea, but prefer the enjoyment of learning and growing at the piano as myself. I'm fine with that. Be realistic. That's such a healthy thing to say. Actually, not I prefer, and then like when you find that enjoyment in learning and growing, that's what I'm saying. Growing, and it's not always like a super slow, like crappy growth. That growth can be pretty big, you know, as we've seen, you know, from some of our members, just people we know in general, and it can certainly be very, very, very edifying. Even while you're like he's saying, be realistic too.
Ed Zielinski nails it here too. Be careful where you put the value on the end goal of the process. You can lose a lifetime of joy if you live in the gap between where you are and where you wish to be. That's exactly my point here, Ed, is that so many people are like, well, I'm nothing if I don't progress to Peter Martin levels by the time I'm such and such age. We got to free ourselves from that mindset and really just enjoy where we are so that we can actually grow. We can't grow until you let go of the idea of I have to be this thing by this time.
Right. Absolutely. Nailed it. Can't wait to see the
video.
We'll
see. I don't know.
Can't wait to see the comments in this video.
I was a lot more confident going in than I am coming out. I'll tell you that much about how at least about how I'm communicating. I think I just got to be real careful to make sure that people understand, like, you can you can and should still want to work and get better and grow as a person. And
Yeah. Yep. Thank you guys for the questions. We're here every Monday, helping humanity. Happy Halloween too. What are you gonna be for Halloween, Adam?
Bill Evans.
Are you? Well, you're almost there. Get you some glasses. What about you, Caleb? A peasant. That sounds so pleasant. A peasant. I keep wanting to do this thing, but Kelly Martin, the beautiful Kelly Martin, will not allow me. I've almost got it broken down. I've been saying this for years. I want us to both go to a Halloween party. We can't go trick-or-treating. That's creepy. Our kids are gone.
Yeah.
I want to go as M&Ms, both of us.
Nice.
Hers would be plain.
Sweet.
No, hers would be plain M&Ms. Mine is with nuts. That's the way the costume would work.
Yeah.
You get it? I
I get it.
That's a great idea. She doesn't find it as that great. So we hope everybody has a safe Halloween.
Oh, yeah.
Halloween, my brother. All right, until next week, the helpline will be back. You'll hear it.